Hi everybody, and thank you for joining me today. So this is the endpoint assessment guidance and information for learners and employers to help prepare for your endpoint assessment with Gina Conway Academy. So before we can enter into the endpoint assessment itself, we have to go through what's known as the gateway process. So the gateway process, you would need to have achieved the 7002 qualification. This is the hairdressing logbook, which is used as part of the on-program training and assessment. Have also achieved functional skills at level 1, and that would be English and maths, and have attempted your level 2 functional skills exams. In order to also enter into your endpoint assessment, you must have completed your 20% off the job training. This would be evidenced in your diary and your matrix sheet. And finally, we need consent from both yourself, us as the training provider, and your employer. So we're all in agreement that you are ready to sit your endpoint assessment. So looking at the endpoint assessment itself, it's broken up into different areas. So one being ways of working, the other the technical skills, which is all the hairdressing abilities itself, the understanding, and then customer service. So how it works, we've got ways of working, which makes up 5% of the total grade. What's something very important to note here, if you fail one area of this, the whole assessment is a fail. So for example, if you were to do a great job, your technical skills, you did a fantastic haircut, great restyle, your color was amazing, your understanding, you're able to demonstrate everything with your knowledge on hairdressing, your customer service was great. However, your ways of working was poor, and that you didn't keep to your schedule properly. There could have been that you're working in a messy salon, that was, your work area being the messy salon wasn't good. That would be a fail under ways of working and a fail for the whole endpoint assessment. So it's very important that you're doing your planning and your preparation. We do lots of practice mock tests for you to make sure that doesn't happen. So ways of working, it's either a fail, pass, or distinction in that area. That makes up 5%. And the technical skills, which would be the consultation, shampoo, cut, style, and color, they're broken down into 10% for the consultation. There's no marks given for the shampoo, but you must pass it. So if you soak your client and fail, again, that would be an overall fail. But obviously, the point is, the steering group who made the qualification, so made the standard, who agreed on the standard, they would obviously not want you to get a high grade based on doing a great shampoo, but not such a great color. So that's why there's no actual percentage marks against the shampoo. Your restyle gives you 20% of the grade. Again, it's a fail, pass, or distinction. You can have the hair up, the set and the styling all coming at 15%, and then the color and lighting service at 25%. The understanding, so you'll then, once you've completed your practical element of the endpoint assessment, you'll have a 10 to 15 minute discussion where your independent endpoint assessor, which is known as an EPA, will give you several questions based on the day and to check your understanding. And then your customer service is based at 5%. So this is very much looking at your aftercare, these kind of things. So an important note to address here is timing. So your endpoint assessment itself takes up to 6 hours, and this is excluding breaks. So if you decide that you're going to have a lunch break and you put this in your schedule before uploading, the clock stops. So you may decide to have half an hour for lunch in between. You may decide to give yourself 15 minutes. So you get the 6 hours. Your declaration to sit the endpoint assessment, we must submit within 2 to 3 months of your endpoint assessment. So for example, if we wanted to sit in September, so if we wanted to plan 3 months from September, we'd be looking at October, November, December. So 2 to 3 months to to get your endpoint assessment booked. The apprentice must provide an appointment schedule and your service plan of the day within 2 weeks of your endpoint assessment date. Obviously, your head of centre will help you with this. And then the grading outcome, it will take up to 20 working days to get the result from your endpoint assessment. You'll get no feedback that day at all. Even if you ask your APA, how did you do? They're not allowed to say how you got on. The reason being is they need to go off and write the reports. They'll look at the photos that they took from the day, weigh up the evidence and decide your grade. That then goes through a quality process with the LEPA, which is the lead independent endpoint assessor, who will quality assure the assessor's decision to make sure that they agree. With regards to preparation, so testing and test results. So you'll need to make sure that any tests are completed before. So you must prove evidence of a skin test and ensure that you have with you your ID badge. So this would be driving license and passport, anything like that. Dress code, there's no strict dress code for the endpoint assessment itself, but it must meet what your salon is. So if everybody else doing the endpoint assessment is all dressed in black, which we have at the Academy, you're not in that, that would be deemed to fail under ways of working. And also thinking about health and safety. So the assessment can be stopped if there's a breach of health and safety. So obviously things like no open toe sandals, those kind of things, or anything which is a real concern, the APA will have to stop the assessment there. And then it's at their discretion if they can confirm if you can restart your endpoint assessment or if it has to be a fail. So the assessment criteria for the endpoint assessment itself. So on the day, you're going to have to do one creative restyle and finish using a minimum of 3 different cutting techniques. So you might need to consider using things like club cutting, freehand, scissor over comb, texturizing. This can also include the use of a razor, precision cutting techniques, including disconnection, fringe cutting, clipper work. So these are all cutting techniques. If you do not use all 3 cutting techniques, it will be deemed as a fail. So you must make sure that your restyle has 3 cutting techniques. It must alter the shape. So it doesn't necessarily have to cut all the hair off. And in fact, you could do, for instance, someone with very, very long hair, cut it above shoulders, one length, using one cutting technique of club cutting, and that would be a fail. But it would need to be a change of shape. So maybe that you've got a layered bob and you turn it into a graduated bob. You may have a 1 length haircut, which you decide to add some layers, put a bit of fringe in there. That's a restyle. So it's a change of shape, not necessarily a change of length, which has at least 3 different cutting techniques. Then over to the blow dry section. So you're going to need to do 2 finished looks. One of them has to be above shoulder and one of them has to be below. This must include 1 setting technique. You have to use at least 2 different styling products and 3 different dressing techniques. So you must cover a blow dry and a hair up style. So the best way to kind of think about your planning is if you're going to do a restyle that's going to be above shoulder, you could use that as your above shoulder blow dry. Your below shoulder blow dry could be like a curly blow dry, and you could even put it in pin curls, for instance, so you can get your setting technique done at the same time. Bear in mind, you only have the 6 hours to get these things done. So the key is down to your planning and down to your models. You could then do the hair up style on your curly blow dry with pin curls. So consider the different styling techniques of a blow dry using a round brush or a blow dry using a flat brush, setting hair, dressing hair, these kind of things. Do consider these other dressing techniques for the hair up. So these could be rolls, curls, smoothing, back combing, back brushing, twists, braids, and plaits. Then we have for the color element. So that would be, you need to do 2 different coloring and lightening services with a minimum of 2 products. So it must be 1 woven highlights needs to be to the root and 1 other colouring technique. Your highlights must be to the root, so there can't be a balayage or any kind of paint on colour. It has to be a normal woven highlights to the roots. And the other colouring technique could even be a toner. So you could even just do a T-section of foils and then put a toner on the basins. It may be that you do a woven set of highlights and in between go through with a demi plus colour in between. If you do this, however, and I'll come on to this probably in the next slide or so, don't do a full head of enlightener or a lightening product in your foil and then go in between with another colour. The reason being is timing, because you have to make sure that if you leave your product on there, if the manufacturer's instructions are saying 50 minutes as your absolute maximum that you can leave on a lightener for, will you be able to apply all those foils in 50 minutes and go through with your demi in between and also be ready by the end of that time? So you may choose to use ELC or high lift tint instead, and go through the quasi to meet your two different colours. We can discuss this more in person, but do plan wisely. So that would be your overall day. So some examples of some endpoint assessment models for the service plan. So here we've got doing over 2 models. You can do it over as many models as you want. I strongly recommend not to do any more than 2. Those that do sometimes fail their assessment because they run out of timing. So I strongly advise maximum 2 models. So model 1 could have a T section of highlights using ELC and 40 grams of Pastel V and 40 vol, and then use an application of demi in between the foils using 7N and 10C volume. So after the colour's been done, the restyle's then using it above the shoulders, using a graduation, disconnection, and texturizing, and then going to blow dry that. That would then meet our above shoulders. Then model 2 is going to be your round brush blow dry, below shoulders, then secured into pin curls with volume. So you're going to go through curly blow dry, secure pin curls as you're working up the head, so you're meeting your blow dry and your set at the same time. You then leave that to cool down, and then you're going to put the hair up using backcombing, smoothing, curls, and rolls. So this method, you would meet all the criteria within those 6 hours. So this way you're doing the least amount of work for the maximum outcome. So a few tips and recommendations for your endpoint assessment. So ways of working is a common area where people have fallen down slightly before from just getting into bad habits. So you must always wear gloves when colouring. This includes the mixing and measuring, removing colour and checking your colour during the strand test. So even as soon as you ground up your client, your gloves and apron PPE go on straight away before even mixing up any colour. You do not mix your colours without this on first. Same when it comes to the removal of your colour, and the same when it comes to doing your strand test to check if your colour is ready to come off. Do ensure your workstation and area are kept tidy throughout. This includes hair on the floor. So if you think about doing a restyle, if you're working and there's hair all over the floor, which you could slip on, that would be a fail. So obviously you haven't got to sweep up to every section. However, if it starts building up, make sure you remove that hair. Don't leave your colour bowls out and don't leave them unwashed. Sorry, so you have to make sure they're washed up and make sure there's no, for instance, tint left over the basins when you've finished. You need to ensure you're running on time into the schedule for the day. So if you were to be falling an hour behind because you've not planned things out properly, that would be a fail. Do not wear open-toe shoes. Do not put your grips in your mouth when doing any hair up. And ensure a common mistake people have made is putting a hairdryer or brush in between your legs or under your armpit. It should put on the trolley or down in between sections, because obviously you're going to burn yourself and this would be a health and safety breach. Your consultation, to always ensure that you complete a porosity and an elasticity test on both your clients. So make sure that's visible that you're doing that to your AEPA. Ensure you're using visual aids with your clients. So you must show that you're using a colour chart or the colour swatches, any images from magazines or from Google, Pinterest, things like this. So you'll need to do this as part of your consultation with your clients, that you both agree on the service and what that client wants to achieve. You must meet and greet your clients. I'm saying shaking hands here. Obviously, now with the new normal on the COVID-19, we won't be shaking the hands, but still meet and greet using a professional image. putting them at ease. Obviously within the academy, we're doing temperature checks, we have the masks on, these kind of things. Keep your client informed of the services and product that you're using throughout. So do put the products out for them to see what they're using, what you're using. Obviously they can't touch them at the moment. And keep your client informed throughout. So it's really important that for your customer service that they're aware of every step of the way what you're doing. And it doesn't mean that every single section you take on a haircut, I'm doing this, this and this. But, you know, I'm just applying colour, I'm going to be using this, I'm going to be using the colour conserve to lock in your colour. I recommend you come back at this point. I recommend you use these products at home. And provide a client record card to your AIPA on the day, which shows evidence of any colours that you've used and updated, any skin tests you've done, things like this. Do not be over familiar with your clients, remain professional. So especially for bringing in family and friends members, that's fine, but you've got to act like you don't know them and act totally professional. For your shampoo and conditioner of the hair and scalp, so you must mustn't get your client wet during the process. They can't leave the basin soaked. Ensure you use the right products to match the hair condition. So you'll be asked about these products at the end while you've used them. Remove any tangles from point to root and provide aftercare advice on all the products. For your restyle, you must, as I mentioned before, use at least 3 different cutting techniques, and the hair must have a visible change of shape. So the AIPA will be taking pictures of befores and afters. There has to be a visible change of shape to that. Very important that you ensure that you do cross-checking throughout, to ensure that the haircut is even. The AIPA will not be checking your haircut through with it personally themselves, but with a comb. They will be watching for balance. So if they do ask to check your haircut, they'll have to ask every person doing the endpoint assessment to check. So they'll be doing visual checks. So it's very important that you are shown, you must show they're doing cross-checking throughout. Grading wise, as we say, it's fail, pass, or distinction. You get higher grades when you're personalizing your haircut. So point cutting at the end once it's dry, you know, personalizing it to the needs, maybe texturizing to ensure that the hair sits properly, that kind of thing. Customer service, so keep your clients informed of the products you're using and to make them at ease, as I mentioned earlier on. There may be some Aveda rituals that you can use in between the services then, which are being completed. Obviously, we know at the moment we're not doing things like hand relief, hand massage are out of the question for now, but there may be other Aveda rituals you can use to help with that customer service. And when discussing hair home care, keep products in front of the client, ask them to smell the product. We won't ask them to smell the product at the moment. We will keep them in front of them just so they're informed of what we're using. And then for the blow dry setting and hair up, so you must complete 1 blow dry above the shoulder and 1 blow dry below the shoulder. One of your blow dries must create volume, movement and curl. So there has to be a visible curl shown at the end of that, and the AIPA will be taking a picture of that. You'll need to set one of your looks, and I recommend you do this by completing a curly blow dry and setting it into pin curls as you work up the head. At least 80% of the hair up must be an updo. So I recommend putting it all up, maybe keeping a couple of bits down just to be on the safe side. You must use at least 3 different dressing techniques on the hair up, and you must use at least 2 different products. So that may be a mousse, spray, that kind of thing. And then for your colour, so you must use at least 2 different types of colouring products. So this may be a lightener, demi or permanent, and this must change the depth and tone. So at least a T-section of foils must be done to the root. So it could be that your T-section of foils would be definitely changing depth and tone, because your toner would be doing that after. Or it might be that your enlightener that's going to lift it. Do be careful, as I mentioned earlier on, about using enlightener or any lightening products due to the processing time. You must show that you've done a strand test by the maximum time. So if it's saying that you must do a strand test within 30 minutes, or the colour can be left on for up to 30 minutes, you must do your strand test by that point to make sure that's been done. You must monitor your colour, as I mentioned earlier on just now, and ensure that you've got the strand test done within that time frame. You'll achieve higher grades by putting in foils to suit the style. So it might be that you use a herringbone type of foil technique. You may choose to break up the colour. If you're doing highlights, you might put a dark one in there to break it up a little bit. These are things which will achieve your higher, more distinction grades. And you must ensure that a copy of the manufacturer's instructions is provided to APA along with your record card if any tests are taken. So we need to ensure that we've got something from the Aveda instructions so the APA will know on the day. They will not be Aveda specialists or L'Oreal specialists. They'll be just, qualified hairdressers. They're experts in their job, but they may not have knowledge on all colour brands. So you need to make sure that's available. Some tips and requirements for the endpoint assessment on understanding. So once you've finished your endpoint assessment, your practical's done, everybody's finished their practical, you'll have about a 10 to 15 minute Q&A session where you'll be asked to explain the services that you undertook today. This is to assess your understanding and check if anything that your APA may have missed during the practical assessment. So you may have missed doing a strand test, an elasticity test or something during, but you may have done that before with your colour client when you met them the first time. So they might be asking you if there's anything that was missed in case you had done it before. There are a few slides here, which I'll leave you to read at a later point. This will help with your understanding. So the following slides are based on consultation, shampoo and condition, cutting, styling, and hair up and colour. So these are the 5 different technical areas it will ask you about. It will also ask you about your customer service, but these are the main areas. So these slides, I'll leave you to read through. These are all recaps of knowledge that you would have covered throughout your apprenticeship as part of your on program. So please revert back to your other guidance notes and your study packs for all these things, but these are all key parts. So I've just done a bit of a recap for you here from consultation through shampooing, styling on the hair classifications, the science of how hair works on this, what the different cutting and colour terminologies are, some questions on colour, things that you might want to consider, which may be asked on the day, and that's it. Thank you very much, and good luck for your endpoint assessment.